Today we're going to be reviewing lessons 3.1 through 3.3. This is for geometry. We're going to look at this figure, and the first question we need to answer is which plane is parallel to ABC. So we need to figure out which plane ABC is. Since a plane is to be named by 3 points, that doesn't necessarily mean there's only 3 points in the plane. So if we follow ABC, that looks like it is the top face of this rectangular prism. So we need to determine the plane that is parallel to that. So if we look directly underneath it, EHG is actually all we would need to name, but it's EHGF. So we can answer that with plane EHG. And then we need to name the intersection of plane BEH and DAH. So we're going to trace those. BEH would be here. So that would mean this is the back side of the rectangular prism. And then we have DAH, which is here. So that would be the square face. So we need to determine the intersection. When you have the intersection of two planes, it's always a line. So that would make AH the intersection. Next we have a group of angles here that we need to determine which type of angles they are, and then use what type they are to determine the measures of them. So if we're going to be referring back to this figure quite a bit, the first thing we need to determine is angles 18 and 26, what type of angles those are. So we have 4 choices: alternate interior, alternate exterior, corresponding, and consecutive interior. So if we go back 18 and 26, that's going to be here and here. So they're both on the same side, but one is in between the two lines, these two, and then one is outside of those, so we have one interior and one exterior on the same side, and that is corresponding. So these two are corresponding. Next we have angles 30 and 31. Choose a different color. 30 and 31 are here and here. Those two, if we turn the figure and look at it sideways almost, they're again in between the two lines, these two. And those would be interior, and they're on the same side, so they're right next to each other in the interior, which would mean consecutive interior. So that's angles 30 and 31. Then we have angles 22 and 28. So we go back. Angles 22 and 28. Whoops, let me change the color. That would be these two. Those are on opposite sides, but they're both in the interior, so those would be alternate interior. And then finally we have angle 17 and angle 21. That's going to be angle 17 and angle 21. Those two are both on the outside of the two lines, these two lines. So they would be considered exterior, and they're on opposite sides, so they would be alternate exterior. And then again, given that the two lines that we've been looking at are parallel, C and D, we need to find the measure of angle 20, or no, I'm sorry, they give you the measure of angle 23 is 104. We need to find the measure of angle 26 and angle 25. So 23 is 104. We need to find 26 and 25. So 26 and 25. Those two are supplementary, but we first need to find one of them. So we need to think about what the relationship between angle 23 and angle 26 are, or 23 and 25, both of which we can relate to 23. So 23 and 25 are both on the interior of C and D, line C and D, so we have them being alternate interior. Alternate interior means that they're the same, so that would make 25 104. Now if we go back, we could find 26 by just thinking that 104 we would need to subtract from 180, since 25 and 26 are oh, excuse me, 25 and 26 are supplementary. So we have 76. So 76 could be our answer, or we could go back and we know that 23 and 26 are consecutive interior angles, and those are also supplementary. So we would again be subtracting 180 minus 104. So both ways we would be able to get 76. Now we're going to move on to another similar diagram, and we need to use the type of angles here to help us find the value of the variables. We have to find x and y. The first thing I would do is think about the relationship of some of these angles. So if we look at angle 4x minus 8 compared to angle 2x minus 18, those are alternate interior. We know that alternate interior are equal, so we could put them equal to each other to solve. So we're going to solve for x. Now, since I just made up these numbers in my head, you're obviously not going to get a negative value on the test, but if you do, you probably want to check over your work just to make sure. But this answer is negative that we got. So x would be negative 5. And then we're going to take that value and plug that into x for the 2x minus 18 angle. And again, you're going to get a negative value. Again, this is not realistic because I'm just making up these numbers, so that's how I got negatives. But on the quiz, you're not going to get negatives. So you have negative 10 minus 18, which is negative 28. So negative 28 would be the angle for 2x minus 18. And then we need to figure out the angle relationship between that angle and then 3y plus 2. So 3y plus 2 and that angle are on the same side of the line and the transversal, excuse me, and they're both in the interior of lines C and D. Oh, I'm sorry. And so they're consecutive interior, which are supplementary. So we would put one of our angles plus the 3y plus 2, and put that equal to 180 to solve for y. So we get 3y plus 2 equals 208, and subtract. So 3y equals 206, and we divide by 3. And we get 68.6 about. And again, this is not very realistic. Sorry, I'm choking. Let me get some water. Again, this is not very realistic because we got a decimal for y. So again, you probably will not get a decimal on the test. So, again, I made up these numbers is the only reason why. You just need to focus on the process of how we got them. So we got y equals 68.6, and then we got x equals -5. Here we're going to determine the slope, so we're going to do this a bunch of times. To find slope, we need to subtract the y coordinates over subtract the x coordinates as a ratio. And then we simplify, so 5 plus 2 is 7. -4 plus -3 is -7. So my answer would be -1. We're going to do that again a couple more times. Always subtract the y's minus the x's, minus the y's, and then the x's minus the x's. Since I start with -11 on point x, I'm also going to start with 0 when I'm subtracting the x's. That is important. So I get -20 over -4, which simplifies to 5. And again, subtract the y's over the x's, which gives me 15 over -10, which we can simplify to divide by 5, so that gives me 3 over -2. And then my final slope problem, -6 minus -4 over -4 minus 4. Just be careful when the numbers are similar to make sure you've subtracted both y's and then subtracted both x's. And then we simplify that to 1/4. So we always want our answer to be a simplified fraction. Next, we're going to use that same idea to solve for x. So they give us 2 points, -8, comma x. And -6, -1. And we need to find the value of x so that the slope of the line is -2. So that means we're going to use the slope formula and put what we get equal to -2. So subtract the y's over the x's, put it equal to -2 over 1, and then what I can do is I could cross multiply to solve this like a proportion. So I get -8 plus 6 is -2 times -2, which is 4. And then I'm going to do 1 times x plus 1, which is just going to be x plus 1. If it was other than 1, I would have to distribute that number when I'm multiplying by a group. And then I would subtract 1, so x would be 3. And that concludes our quiz review.